Beneath the untouched jungle of central Vietnam, there is a cave so large it contains its own jungle, generates its own clouds, and produces its own rain hundreds of feet below the surface of the Earth. In 1991, a local farmer stumbled onto the entrance, heard a river roaring from somewhere deep inside the darkness, felt wind blasting upward from a void he could not see the bottom of, and ran. He would spend the next 17 years trying to find that entrance again. When a team of British cavers finally descended into that void in 2009, they did not just discover a cave. They discovered a world, a passage so enormous you could fit a 40-story skyscraper inside it and still fly a drone over the top. Creatures found nowhere else on the planet, formations older than the dinosaurs, and a network of underground chambers so vast that to this day, over 70% of it has never been touched by human hands. But Vietnam is not alone. Across the planet, hidden beneath mountains, deserts, glaciers, and oceans, there are caves that break every rule nature is supposed to follow. Crystals taller than human beings, ice palaces inside summer mountains, entire ecosystems sealed from the outside world for millions of years, underground canyons deeper than anything on the surface. Join us as we descend into 13 of the most extraordinary underground worlds ever found on Earth. Everything you are about to hear is real, documented, and verified, and somehow it is more extraordinary than anything fiction could invent. Let's go!
Number 13. Phong Nha Ke Bang National Park, Vietnam. In Quang Binh Province, central Vietnam, buried under triple canopy jungle and littered with unexploded ordnance left over from the American War, lies the oldest continuous karst landscape in all of Southeast Asia. Phong Nha Ke Bang National Park sits on limestone that began forming over 400 million years ago during the Devonian period. That means this stone was already ancient before the first dinosaur ever drew breath, before trees existed, before insects learned to fly. The park was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2003 and expanded in 2015, recognized not only for its biodiversity but for what lies beneath it. Over 300 caves and grottos have been documented within the park's roughly 350 square miles of protected jungle. Yet scientists estimate that less than 30% of the total underground network has ever been surveyed or mapped. The surface alone is staggering. Towering karst mountains covered in primary forest. Underground rivers that appear and vanish through limestone sinkholes. Rare primates, including the critically endangered Hatten langur, moving through the canopy above cave entrances. But it is what hides beneath this green canopy that has made Phong Nha Ke Bang one of the most important geological sites on the planet. The Bru Van Kiel and Chute peoples, indigenous communities who have lived along the jungle's edge for centuries, have always known the ground beneath them was hollow. Their stories speak of places where animals refuse to walk, where wind howls upward from the stone, and where the earth itself seems to breathe. For decades, Western scientists dismissed these accounts. Then they went underground, and they discovered the locals had been right about everything.
Number 12. Hang Son Doong, Quang Binh, Vietnam. The story of how the largest cave on Earth was found reads like fiction, but every detail is documented. In 1990 or 91, a local farmer and jungle logger named Ho Can Ninh was working deep inside the forest of Phong Nha Ke Bang when a rainstorm forced him to seek shelter. He stumbled onto an opening in the limestone hillside. From inside came the deafening roar of rushing water and a powerful blast of wind surging upward from a darkness so deep he could not see where it ended. Ho Can Ninh marked the area in his memory and left. Then the jungle swallowed the entrance. For 17 years, he tried to find that opening again and failed. The forest was too dense, the terrain too extreme, a single hole in a hillside hidden beneath millions of trees. In 2008, Ho Can Ninh connected with Howard Limbert, a British caver who had been exploring the region's caves since the 1990s. Together, they relocated the entrance. In April 2009, Limbert led a team from the British Cave Research Association on the first documented descent into what Ho Can Ninh had found. The numbers that came back shattered every existing record. The main passage stretches over 5.5 miles. In its largest sections, it reaches over 660 feet high and nearly 500 feet wide. A Boeing 747 could fly through the main chamber without scraping the walls. You could place an entire New York City block inside and stack a 40-story skyscraper on top of it and still have room above. Son Doong contains its own river, which has been carving the limestone for an estimated 2 to 3 million years. It contains two massive dallines, collapsed sections of the ceiling where sunlight pours in from hundreds of feet above, creating natural skylights over fully grown jungles that have been thriving inside the cave for thousands of years. Trees nearly 100 feet tall, dense undergrowth of ferns and palms, monkeys, birds, snakes, and insects living in an ecosystem that exists entirely underground. And above the treetops, drifting slowly between the stalactites and the canopy, the cave generates real clouds. The temperature differential between the cave floor and the ceiling hundreds of feet above creates convection currents that produce actual cloud formation, and in certain conditions, rain. The cave runs its own self-contained water cycle, completely independent of the sky above.
The cave also contains some of the tallest stalagmites ever measured on Earth, towering columns over 200 feet high that may have been growing continuously for more than 1,000,000 years. One formation, known as the Hand of Dog, has become one of the most photographed geological features on the planet. Scattered across certain chambers, hundreds of cave pearls sit on the cave floor, perfectly spherical mineral deposits formed over thousands of years under conditions so specific that finding them in large numbers is exceptionally rare. Sondong is not just a cave, it is a sealed world with its own climate, its own jungle, and its own evolutionary timeline. And for 17 years, a single farmer was the only human being who knew it existed.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this.
Number 11. Hang En Cave, Quang Binh, Vietnam. Just a few miles from Son Dung, still within the boundaries of Phong Nha Ke Bang National Park, sits Hang En. Its name means Swift Cave, after the thousands of swiftlet birds that nest inside its entrance, one of the largest cave openings anywhere in the world. Walking into Hang En feels like stepping through a cathedral door scaled up to the size of a football field. The entrance chamber is so wide and tall that the jungle outside remains visible as a bright green frame around the immensity of the darkness within. Hang En is widely recognized as the third largest cave passage on the planet. But what makes Hang En genuinely surreal is its underground beach. Inside the cave, a river flows across the floor, and along its banks sits a wide stretch of fine sand illuminated by daylight filtering through the massive entrance, a full beach inside a cave. Explorers and trekkers camp on this beach overnight as part of the multi-day approach trek to Son Dung. At night, with campfires reflecting off towering cave walls and the river murmuring in the darkness, expedition members have described it as one of the most otherworldly experiences on Earth. Hang En also contains towering stalagmites and curtain-like flowstone deposits that have been growing for millions of years. In any other part on Earth, Hang En would be the headline attraction. Here, it lives in the shadow of its even larger neighbor, but it is a stunning reminder that Sondong is not an anomaly. It is part of a connected underground landscape so vast that new caves are still being discovered every single year.
Number 10. Paradise Cave, Thien Doran Cave, Quang Binh, Vietnam. In 2005, a British cave research expedition led by Howard Limbert discovered yet another chamber beneath Phong Nha Ke Bang that would earn its own place in the record books. Thien Doran, translated as Paradise Cave, stretches over 31 kilometers beneath the surface, roughly 19 miles, making it one of the longest dry caves in all of Asia. Limbert personally named it Paradise Cave after witnessing its interior for the first time, and the name barely does it justice. The first kilometer, the only section currently open to visitors, is accessed by a wooden boardwalk that descends into a passage lined with formations so elaborate they look engineered. Stalactites hang from the ceiling in dense layered curtains. Stalagmites rise from the floor like pillars of a buried temple. Flowstone cascades down the walls in frozen waterfalls of mineral deposit, each one representing hundreds of thousands of years of construction, molecule by molecule, drip by drip. Some of these formations tower over 100 feet. The remaining 30 kilometers beyond the tourist section have barely been explored. The silence inside is absolute. No wind, no wildlife, no sound except the occasional drip of water. A sound that has been sculpting to stone since before human civilization existed. Paradise Cave is a powerful reminder that Son Dung, despite its record-breaking size, is just one chamber in a network so immense it could take decades more to fully document.
Number 9. Nika Crystal Cave, Cave of the Giant Crystals, Chihuahua, Mexico. 900 feet beneath the Sierra de Nica mountain in the Chihuahua Desert of northern Mexico, miners drilling for lead and silver in the year 2000 accidentally broke through a wall and fell into a nightmare made of glass. The Cueva de los Cristales, the Cave of the Giant Crystals, contains the largest natural crystals ever found on Earth. Enormous beams of selenite, a crystalline form of gypsum, crisscross the chamber like the ribcage of a buried giant. The largest measured crystal stretches over 36 feet long and weighs an estimated 55 tons. These formations have been growing in near-perfect conditions for roughly 500,000 years, fed by mineral-rich water heated by a magma chamber sitting directly beneath the cave. But the same conditions that created these crystals also make the cave one of the most hostile environments a human being can enter. The air temperature inside sits at a constant 136 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity is locked at 90 to 100%. Without specialized cooling suits, a human being would lose consciousness within 10 minutes and die from heat stroke in under 30. Your lungs would essentially begin to cook from the inside. When the mine's pumps were deactivated in 2015 due to the company ceasing operations, groundwater began flooding the chamber again. The crystals are now slowly being resubmerged in the same mineral-rich water that created them, returning to the conditions under which they grew for 500,000 years. The cave is currently inaccessible. No photograph fully captures the scale, but every image of a human being standing next to one of these crystals delivers the same visceral shock. These formations look like they belong on another planet. They exist beneath a desert in Mexico.
Number 8. Waitomo Glowworm Caves, Waikato Region, New Zealand. Deep beneath the rolling green farmland of New Zealand's North Island, inside a limestone cave system that has been forming for over 30 million years, the ceiling comes alive. The Waitomo glowworm caves are home to Arachnocampa luminosa, a species of bioluminescent glowworm found nowhere else on Earth except New Zealand. These are not worms at all, but the larval stage of a fungus gnat. Each larva spins a nest of silk on the cave ceiling and dangles dozens of sticky, luminous threads downward like a living chandelier. The blue-green light they produce attract flying insects, which become trapped in the threads and are slowly consumed. Individually, a single glowworm produces a light barely visible to the naked eye, but inside the Waitomo caves, millions of them cover the ceiling in such density that the effect is overwhelming. Standing in the darkness below and looking up, you see what appears to be a night sky filled with stars. Not a simulation, not an artificial display. A living galaxy of bioluminescent organisms carpeting the cave roof as far as the eye can see. The caves were first explored in 1887 by local Maori chief Tane Tina Rao and English surveyor Fred Mace, who entered by raft using candlelight and looked up to see the glowing ceiling for the first time. Today, visitors glide through the main grotto on silent boats, drifting beneath the glowworm display in near total silence. No camera fully captures the experience, but the images and footage that exist showing the blue glow reflected on the still water below are among the most visually stunning underground photographs ever taken.
Number 7. Deer Cave, Gunung Mulu National Park, Borneo, Malaysia. Before Sandong was measured and confirmed, the title of largest cave passage on Earth belonged to Deer Cave in the rainforests of Borneo. Located inside Gunung Mulu National Park in the Malaysian state of Sarawak, Deer Cave's main passage stretches over a mile long and reaches heights of nearly 400 feet. The entrance is one of the largest cave openings in the world, a gaping mouth in the side of a limestone cliff that swallows the surrounding jungle in shadow. But the most famous feature of Deer Cave is not the passage itself, it is what lives inside. An estimated 3 million wrinkle-lipped bats roost in the upper reaches of the cave. Every evening at dusk, weather permitting, these bats emerge from the cave entrance in a continuous spiraling column that can take up to 30 minutes to fully exit. The stream of bats twist through the sky like a living tornado, visible for miles, as millions of individual animals pour out of the darkness and fan across the surrounding jungle to feed. The bat exodus of Deer Cave is one of the greatest wildlife spectacles on Earth and has been filmed extensively by the BBC, National Geographic, and dozens of independent documentarians. Peregrine falcons and bat hawks patrol the exit column, picking off individuals in midair. Inside the cave, the accumulation of bat guano on the floor sustains its own ecosystem of insects, fungi, and scavengers. The smell is legendary among cavers. The biological richness is unmatched.
On the wall near the entrance, erosion has carved a formation that bears an uncanny resemblance to the profile of Abraham Lincoln. It was not sculpted. Nature simply decided to sign its work.
Number 6. Wang Dong Cave, Chongqing Province, China. In 2013, a joint British-Chinese expedition descended into a cave system in the Wulong Karst region of Chongqing Province, southwestern China. What they found inside made international headlines and drew immediate comparisons to San Dune. Wang Dong, sometimes translated as Second Royal Cave, contains an underground chamber so vast that it generates its own weather system. The cavern is so large that clouds form inside it. Real, visible low-lying clouds drifting through the upper reaches of the chamber between enormous stalactites and the distant ceiling. When photographer Robbie Schoen, who accompanied the expedition, captured the first images of clouds forming inside Wang Dong, the photographs went viral worldwide. The shots show human explorers dwarfed by a space so immense that the upper portions of the cave disappear into actual cloud cover. The scale is almost impossible to process. The cave system extends for over 25 miles of mapped passage and reaches depths of more than 1,000 feet below the surface. Enormous stalagmite formations, underground rivers, and vast open chambers fill the network. The Wulong Karst region surrounding the cave is itself a UNESCO World Heritage Site, part of the South China Karst, recognized as one of the most spectacular examples of humid tropical karst landscapes on Earth. Wang Dong proves that San Dune is not a freak occurrence. The conditions that produce cave systems large enough to generate their own climates exist in multiple locations across the planet. And the fact that Wang Dong was only explored for the first time in 2013 suggests there may be others, equally enormous, still waiting in total darkness beneath landscapes nobody has thought to look beneath. Number 5. Škocjan Caves, Divača, Slovenia. In the karst plateau of southwestern Slovenia, near the small town of Divača, the Reka River does something extraordinary. It flows across the surface like any normal river. Then, without warning, it plunges into the earth and vanishes into a cave system so vast that UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site in 1986. The Škocjan Caves contain one of the largest underground canyons ever discovered. The main chamber, known as Martel's Chamber, is over 400 feet long, over 200 feet wide, and nearly 500 feet high. The Reka River roars through the bottom of this canyon, carving the limestone deeper with every passing century. The sound of rushing water echoing off walls that rise above you like the interior of a skyscraper turned inside out. The experience of crossing the Cirkvenik Bridge, a narrow walkway spanning the canyon at a height of over 150 feet above the river, has been described by visitors as one of the most vertigo-inducing moments of their lives. Below you, the river crashes through total darkness. Above you, the cave ceiling disappears into blackness so complete it feels like staring into open sky at midnight. Humans have been using these caves for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence shows habitation dating back to the Neolithic period. But the deeper chambers, the ones where the river disappears into passages too dangerous and too flooded to follow, remain unexplored. Nobody knows where the Reka River goes after it vanishes into the deepest reaches of the Škocjan system. It reappears at the surface roughly 20 miles away near the coast. What happens in between is still a mystery.
Number 4. Cenotes of the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico. Across the flat limestone plain of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, thousands of circular sinkholes puncture the surface like bullet holes in a sheet of white rock. These are cenotes, natural pits formed when the ceiling of an underground cave collapses and exposes the water table below. The ancient Maya civilization considered cenotes sacred. They were primary sources of fresh water in a landscape with almost no surface rivers, and several, including the sacred cenote at Chichen Itza, served as sites for ritual offerings and ceremonies. Artifacts, gold, jade, and human remains have been recovered from their depths by archaeologists. But what lies beneath the cenotes is far larger than any single sinkhole suggests. Underwater exploration over the past several decades has revealed that many cenotes are connected by an immense network of fully submerged cave passages running beneath the entire peninsula. The longest explored underwater cave system on Earth, Sistema Sak Akten, stretches over 215 miles of mapped passage. Cave divers have spent decades mapping these tunnels, swimming through crystal clear water in total darkness, following passages that twist, narrow, open into cathedral-sized chambers, and then narrow again. The water in cenotes is often so clear that visibility can exceed 300 feet. Photographs taken by cave divers show shafts of sunlight piercing the turquoise water from the sinkhole opening above, illuminating submerged stalactites and stalagmites that formed when the cave was above the water table during the last ice age, thousands of years ago. Swimming through a cenote is swimming through geological time. The formations around you grew in dry air tens of thousands of years ago, were flooded when sea levels rose, and are now preserved underwater like a museum exhibit that nobody built.
Number 3. Ice Riesenwelt Cave, Werfen, Salzburg, Austria. High in the Tennengebirge mountain range in the Austrian Alps, roughly 40 miles south of Salzburg, a cave entrance sits at an elevation of over 5,500 feet above sea level. From this entrance, freezing alpine wind is funneled into a limestone cave system that stretches for over 26 miles. Ice Riesenwelt translates to World of the Ice Giants. It is the largest ice cave on Earth. Inside, the first kilometer of passage is filled with massive ice formations created by a process unique to this type of cave. During winter, frigid air pours into the entrance and freezes any water that has seeped through the rock above. During summer, the cave's natural ventilation system prevents warm air from penetrating deep enough to melt the ice. The result is a year-round frozen palace inside a mountain that, on the outside, experiences warm summer temperatures. Enormous ice curtains hang from the ceiling. Frozen waterfalls cascade down the cave walls in suspended animation, captured mid-flow and locked in ice for decades or centuries. Stalagmites made entirely of ice rise from the floor, some reaching heights of over 65 feet. The formations shift and change shape with the seasons, growing in winter and retreating slightly in summer, making Ice Riesenwelt a living, breathing ice sculpture gallery that is never exactly the same twice. The cave was first explored in 1879 by Anton Posselt, a natural scientist from Salzburg. Today, it is open to the public during summer months. Visitors climb a steep mountain path to the entrance, then follow a guided tour through the ice chambers by the light of magnesium lamps carried by the guides, a tradition that dates back over a century.
Number 2. Lechugia Cave. In 1986, cavers working inside Carlsbad Caverns National Park in southeastern New Mexico broke through a debris plug at the bottom of a small, unremarkable pit that had been known for decades but largely ignored. Behind that plug was a blast of wind so strong it blew out their carbide lamps. That wind was the breath of a cave system so vast and so chemically unique that it would fundamentally change our understanding of how caves form. Lechugia Cave currently extends over 150 miles of mapped passage and reaches a depth of over 1,600 feet, making it one of the deepest caves in the continental United States. But its length and depth are not what make it extraordinary. Its formations are. Unlike most caves on Earth, which are carved by water flowing downward through rock, Lechugia was formed primarily by sulfuric acid rising from below, dissolving the limestone from underneath in a process called hypogenic speleogenesis. This unusual chemistry produced mineral formations found in almost no other cave on the planet. Hydrogmosite balloons, delicate hollow spheres of mineral that look like frozen soap bubbles, subaqueous helictites that twist and branch in defiance of gravity, massive gypsum chandeliers hanging from chamber ceilings, underwater pools of crystal so clear they appear bottomless, sulfur deposits in vivid yellow streaks along the walls, and all of it in a state of near pristine preservation because Lechugia has been sealed from the surface and essentially untouched for millions of years. Access to Lechugia is strictly controlled by the National Park Service. Only approved scientific research teams are permitted to enter, and every expedition follows extreme protocols to avoid contaminating the cave's environment. This is not a tourist cave, it is a scientific vault, and the formations inside are considered among the most beautiful and unusual mineral displays ever documented in any cave on Earth.
Number 1. Ice Riesenwelt Ice Cave, Austria. High in the Tennengebirge range of the Austrian Alps, at over 5,500 feet of elevation, a cave entrance funnels freezing alpine wind into a limestone system stretching over 26 miles. Ice Riesenwealth translates to World of the Ice Giants. It is the largest ice cave on Earth. During winter, frigid air freezes any water that seeps through the rock above. During summer, natural ventilation prevents warm air from penetrating deep enough to melt the ice. The result is a year-round frozen palace inside a mountain that experiences warm temperatures on the outside. Enormous ice curtains hang from the ceiling. Frozen waterfalls cascade down the walls in suspended animation. Stalagmites made entirely of ice rise over 65 feet. The formations shift with the seasons, growing in winter, retreating slightly in summer, making Ice Riesenwealth a living sculpture gallery never exactly the same twice. First explored in 1879 by Anton Posselt, the cave is now open to visitors during summer months. Guides lead tours through ice chambers by the light of magnesium lamps, a tradition dating back over a century.
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.